Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Chof in Subas, as we learned for Fushlan from Yosef Israel ben Chaim Michal and Elazar ben Reuma. Yesterday we got down to the 16th line on the page. Chof Amar Al, the 16th line. Amar Abavu. Emazim Menasa Adam El Befneim. When it turns, when you become, when you try to turn witnesses into conspiring false witnesses, what does that mean? We have a special cloud, and when it comes to Adam, we know Al Pi Shnayim Adam Yakum Davar. Whether we talk about Davar Sheba Erva Pachas Mishnayim or money matters, even though I told you many times, I said in today's world, very few cases that come to a Bezdin, a Jewish court, actually are decided by two Adam, because most of the time there's not two Adam. I'm not talking about getting in Kedushin, where you know there's Adam there, but I'm talking about regular money matters. There's some dispute over a sale, over a business deal, or something like that. How many times are the two Adam who are going to remember the story and tell it? It doesn't happen very often. But when it comes to the Torah, when it comes to testifying about getting Kedushin, Erva, things of that sort, or money matters, the Torah says you need two Adam. So the two Adam, if they're contradicted, number one, number two say this, number three, number four say the opposite, so you can't accept either one. But it doesn't mean that the Adam are puzzled. It just means that we don't know who to believe and we leave it. That's what we say. You leave the money where it is because you don't know what to do. Uki trade, Vavi trade. The Gemara said at the top of the page, 2 against 2. However, there's a special law in the Torah that if two Adam come along, 1 and 2 testify about something, and then another set of Adam, 3 and 4 come along and say, you are liars because you were with us in St. Louis on that day at that time, then we believe the second group. Why not believe the first group? That's the halacha in the Torah. When they're not testifying about the case, they're saying Yimanu Ha'isam. So the Gemara wanted to say Kasha, just contradictory Adam, is like the beginning. In other words, it's like Michael said, it's a shtickle. It's a partial hazama. And just like hazama has to be in front of you, meaning 3 and 4 can't testify with 1 and 2 being in absentia, not there. 3 and 4 have to come and say, you 1 and 2, you were with us. Look me in the eye and say, you were with us. You have to say it in front of them. Otherwise, you can't be masim them. The Gemara wanted to say maybe Akosha is the same way. Says the Gemara, no. And here the Gemara says, Amar Avu in the 16th line. When it comes to Hazam, they say Imanu Yisem. In other words, and when you do that, when you disqualify those witnesses, number 1 and 2, because you say you couldn't have testified about the murder in New York, because at that same moment you were with us in St. Louis. It's impossible for you to have been there. So when you say that, you disqualify 1 and 2 and you make them Adam Sulam going forward. They now cannot testify about anything else because they're known liars, right? So, but contradictory testimony. 2 people say that Jim killed him, and 2 people say no, that John killed him. That doesn't make them into liars, and that they could do even in absentia, even in front of him. Bazama shalom b'fneim, and if you do azama in front, let's say 3 and 4 come and say, well, 1 and 2 aren't here right now. We can't wait for them, but they were with us in St. Louis on that time at that day. So it's not hazama. You didn't turn 1 and 2 into permanent liars, but it is considered a contradiction, so you can't accept 1 and 2's testimony. So again, to make them full hazama in the sense that not only are they liars, and the Torah says that they were trying to kill somebody or make somebody pay $1,000, you impose that punishment on them right now. That's the punishment for being conspiring liars. That you can only turn them into eyes in front of them, in front of their face, but not in front of their face. You can't. But they could still be on kasha. You could still make their testimony unacceptable because they are considered this contradictory testimony. Amar Mar. Im yesh edim sheksav yadam huzeh o sheksav yasminak macher mishtar shekarvar. We said before that if they're edim, right? This edim are signed on a star. They said this at the end of the daf yesterday. There's 2 people are signed on a star, and they died. So they died. So they can't confirm their own signatures. But if there's other Adam that's their signatures, or or the court can confirm those signatures. Why? Because there was another star registered in the court, and Shekal of Ir, and that court challenged, and that star was challenged. A star for a sale or a loan, and that was challenged. Somebody said, I don't know if those signatures are good. Bezin confirmed that those signatures are good. In other words, you have in the court records, you have these two signatures, which are signed and confirmed by the court that, yes, these are indeed real signatures. Ain't an amonim. In other words, you don't believe, ain't amonim. Ain't amonim. So if there's items that they're ksav yadam, that this is the item, that this is indeed their signatures, or ain't amonim. In other words, who's not believed? They're not believed to ruin these stars. In other words, we said, if somebody comes along and say, no, there was a t'nai, or there was some other, two people come along and say, we recognize those signatures, but not there was a t'nai, but the Edom were puzzled. They were relatives at the time. He was his brother-in-law, or they were puzzled for some other reason, or they were forced, or they were ketanim. If the signatures can be confirmed independent of these two guys who are trying to ruin it, then they're not believed. So he said, how much are they not believed? Well, it's really 2 against 2, right? Because you have the 2 that are confirmed, right? The Bezdin had confirmed it before, and you have these 2, so it's 2 against 2, and you leave the money where it is. So ain't a money that the Edom will come along and say that these signatures are not good. Yes, it indeed is the signature of number 1 and number 2, but they were forced or they were relatives or whatever. We don't accept it if you can confirm these signatures from some other court documents or from some other Edom. So some take out the next line, but you can leave it in. Also, Karl Bir ain't only if it was challenged and then it was confirmed. It's a proof to what Rasi. When you want to confirm the signatures on the star, and you don't have any Edom, there's no Edom here at all. We have the star here. The Malva and Lova, let's say, are arguing. The Malva says, you owe me $1,000. The Lova says, no, I don't owe you the money. Your star is forged. You have an ID which is forged. So he's got to confirm the Edom aren't here. You can confirm it with another, that the signatures are valid signatures because you can confirm it with another court document in which they're signed. So he says, you can only become a star from another star which was challenged and confirmed. In other words, otherwise, maybe the other star is also forged. What does the Lova say? I don't owe you the money. You have a star and I owe you, it's forged. It's a forgery. The Edom aren't here. I don't know who those signatures are. Nothing. So Rabasi says you can confirm it if you have another court document which was challenged with those same signatures and was confirmed to be valid signatures. Then you can confirm it. But if it's not been confirmed in court, so how are you proving it from another document? The other document will also be forged. I could forge one document and say, here's an I owe me $1,000. Prove it. Maybe that's a forgery. Oh, I have another forgery right here. Prove it. How do you know that the other one's good? So Rasi says it's got to be confirmed in court. It was challenged and confirmed. Yeah.
I don't quite understand the logic. The Edom in the second case, in the current case, not in the previous case, right? They're not saying that there's forgery.
There's no Edom at all. There's no Edom at all. The Malva,
they're Edom on the signature.
On the Edom signed on the star, right?
And they're not denying that these are the signatures of those people.
Who's they? The Lova. The Lova saying that it's a fake IOU. Those are forgeries.
That the Edom were kosher for one reason.
No. We're not talking. That's the previous case. Here we're just talking about in general. Here we're talking about in general that before we talk about a case where two people come and say that the Edom weren't kosher,
right.
And we also confirm it from a court if there's a previous document confirming that the signatures are good, right? Then it's 2 against 2, and you leave the money where it is. It's 2 against 2. Now we're talking about Rabasi's talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we're talking about a different case. Now we're talking about a simple case where the Lova challenges it, and you want to be Makayim it from some other court document. There are no Edom at all coming to testify. You can only do it from a document that was challenged and confirmed. Amrin Adoy. He says, listen, when you want to in Adoy, they said you have to have 2 confirmations. And as if you're trying to confirm it from another document, it's not enough to have 1, but 2. Either from 2 ksubas, 2 that's a valid document, a ksuba. Or from 2 fields, meaning 2 bills of sale of fields. That's only for what's considered a good bill of sale. I could also make up a bill of sale, but a bill of sale that's confirmed is a bill of sale that was valid. Jim sold this to Bob, and Bob was on the land for 3 years without peacefully. There were no protests against him. Then you know it's a valid document. That's what Rashi says over here. If the Edom are signed on 2 other ones, and it's not enough to have a confirmation that this is a valid signature based on one other document, it's got to be 2. Remember we said that the chazaka is 3 years, meaning that it wasn't challenged, that it was a valid document, either from the 2 ksubas that we have confirmation, or that it was a bill of sale that wasn't challenged. When you're confirming it, listen to this. What happens over here? You have a malva and a lova, right? The malva says, Yomi $1,000. The lova says, I challenge you. I don't believe that it's a valid document. So we say you have to confirm it from another document in court. Nardor says you have to have 2 documents. And he says, but the documents cannot be other documents that the malva pulled out of his wallet. Understand? Because that could also be a forgery. He said, here's an IOU, you owe me $1,000. The guy says, no, it's a forgery. Oh, I have another one here confirming the signatures. That could be the same forgery. You understand? So he says, it's got to be from a third party or from a court. Why can't you rely on another document that the malva himself, the litigant himself, pulls out of his pocket, because maybe he forged it, right? Maybe he forged it. In other words, maybe this guy, right? What happened? This guy is confirming the first document with a second document, right? Right. So he says, well, what does the second mean when we put? Maybe the second one is a forgery. He copied it from the other one. So he says, well, so maybe also here. So you confirm it from, let's say, a document in court or a document of a third party. Maybe this guy went to the third party, saw the signature there. You know, you went to Washington, you saw the Declaration of Independence, and you saw John Hancock the way he wrote it, and then you came home and you wrote John Hancock the same way that he wrote it there, right? It says, you can't be mechav that much. In other words, we all know that John Hancock had that big signature, but if it's not right in front of you to copy it exactly, that's pretty hard. That's pretty hard. So if you pull out a document from your pocket to prove it, here's the document. Oh, it's a forgery? Well, I got another one here. Big deal. You copy one from the other, right? You copy one from the other. But if you can confirm it from a document that somebody else had, you can't assume that the malva went and saw it, and then he was able to copy it perfectly. This is before you had cell phones that made pictures and instantaneous, and you had everything in front of you. You don't assume the guy went somewhere, saw a signature, and came home, memorized it, and wrote it down. That person wouldn't be able to do that well. So therefore, you want to confirm it, and that's what it is. Today we have notaries or lawyers or whatever to confirm the signatures because, again, maybe it's a forgery. Here's a point. The Torah says that you can't mail in your testimony. Today we have video testimony. Somebody's dying, they want to get his testimony, or he writes it in, right? You send it in, an affidavit. What's an affidavit? It's a sworn document, that this is so-and-so, and you accept that in court as testimony. The halacha in the Torah says, mipiyim, al pi shnai medim. It's got to be from their mouth. You got to hear it directly. The court has to hear them speak it in front of you. You can't say the guy's dying and he wrote it down. You have to be able to say it yourself. We all said before that you can't change your testimony, right? In lo yagid, kivin shekut shuvay magid. Okay, so he says like this: here's what happens. A guy saw something take place. He was asked to be a witness, and till they get the court appearance, till that they come to court, it could take a long, long time. So he wrote it down. He made himself some notes to what took place to refresh his memory later on. Okay, says you can do that. You can do that, and that's not considered. It doesn't mean that he's sending his notes in as the court. The notes are simply to remind him, and then when he reads the notes, his memory is refreshed, and when he testifies in court, he's testifying about something that he saw. He's got to remember. Can't be that he doesn't remember it all. He just, well, this is what I've written down. This must have happened. No, he's got to remember it. Even if he doesn't remember it on his own. He doesn't remember it on his own. This reminds him. See from Yochanan, Honey Bay Trey, two people. They saw some testimony together. They were witnesses to a court case or a murder or something. And one of them forgot about it. He forgot it. The other guy who remembers it can remind this guy. Because Rabbi Yochanan says, even if you don't remember it, you had it in your notes, that's good enough. Okay, so Rashi says, even so, Rashi, a few lines before the bottom says, after he sees it in the star, Nasan Libo, he pushes himself, he makes an effort, Benisker. He didn't forget it that much. He still remembers it when he's reminded of it. In other words, the first of him, Rav Huna says, he's got to remember on his own without the documents, without the notes. The notes are just to remind him of some of the details. Rav Huna says, no, even if he doesn't remember himself, he only remembers it when he saw his notes. But when he saw his notes, his memory was refreshed, and then he remembered seeing it himself. That's okay. But if he didn't see it, if he doesn't remember the incident at all he's doing is he's seeing his notes, and I wrote this down, I guess this happened, I don't remember it all. That's no good. Because then you're not testifying from your mouth, from your brain, you're testifying from your paper. You're just reading what you wrote. That's no good. What happens if the Baldin himself reminded him? Not the Adam reminded him. In other words, we said if he wrote it down, that's okay. He wrote it down, that was just to refresh his memory. Or if the other aide refreshed his memory, but then he remembered it, that's okay. What happens if the Baldin, the litigant, reminded him? Were you there when I lent this guy $1,000? You don't remember that? And he was reminded, what about that? So that's the question. Even if the litigant himself reminded the witness, that's good. No, the litigant can't remind you. Because if the litigant remind you, we suspect that obviously he has his side of the story to tell. So that's not good. However, if the witness is a rabbi, Afilo Atzmo, even if the litigant reminded him, he won't lie and just say what the litigant told him unless he really remembered it, because he knows he's an honest person if he's a rabbi. Right? Kihad Ravashi, like the case of Ravashi, have Yadile B'Sadusalo Rav Kana. He has a testimony about Rav Kana. Rav Kana had some sort of a incident, some sort of a transaction. And Ravashi knew testament at him. Amalei, Midochir Mar Haisadusa. Do you remember? Remember a few years back, I asked you to be a witness over here. Do you remember this? I said, Amalei Lo. I don't remember, because Ravashi was honest. I don't remember. He says, you don't remember that this guy came to my house and I gave him the money and all that? Amalei Lo Yadana. I don't remember it. L'sof, later on, Itkar Ravashi. Unfortunately, say this took place not in court, before they came to court. Because in court, what did I say? We have a klal. Imlo Yagid, you can only testify once. You can't change your testimony in court, unless it was talked to Debra, that's not changing it. You understand? You can't change your testimony in court. You can't do what this guy Filber did or whatever, that went back and forth, he changed his mind. You can't do that. Once he said one thing, that's accepted. So this business that Ravashi and Rav Kana were going at it, Rav Kana said, don't you remember this story? He says, no. Don't you remember the story? No. Afterwards, he remembered it. That all took place, that discussion took place before they came to court, because he can't change his opinion in court. L'sofi to Ravashi. Asalei. And he gave testimony on behalf of Rav Kana. He remembered it. Chazal Rav Kana, the Machasim. He saw that Rav Kana was a little bit hesitant here. Rav Kana says, Ravashi's testifying to me, but I know he didn't remember it. I told him, I reminded him of it. How could he testify about something he didn't remember? Amalei, Rashi says, Mi Savras Alecha, because someone you think I relied on you reminding me. You reminded me, you indeed refreshed my memory, but afterwards I remembered it. I know Dramoy Nafshoi. I pushed myself. I put it on myself. I tried real hard. I tried to remember, and I remembered it myself. Itri, and I remembered it myself. Indeed, I didn't remember it at the beginning, but after you reminded me of it, I did remember it. Tonight, these things happen. These things happen. I remember when a few years ago when Rabbi Poland died, it was just his 4th yahrzeit. The wife called us that we should, with the will or something like that, I had signed his will, years before. I didn't remember signing it. And then after I pushed myself and remembered it, like I thought about it, I said, yeah, now I do remember going into a study and he gave me some papers to sign or whatever. Sometimes it happens that way. All right. So we're talking about memory. You can sometimes if you...
Is this case at Tzubra the Rabbah?
There's a Tzubra Rabbanan. Yeah. Now, the idea is that even if it's not Tzubra Rabbanan, if my notes reminded me or if my co-witness reminded me, we said that's okay. Because if just refreshing your memory. If you don't remember the incident at all, and the guy just told you this is what we were there, come and testify with me because I don't remember it at all, you can't testify because that's being blood beaks up or somebody else, or worse, if you don't even write it down, the other guy's telling you that's what do we call that? No, we're not witness tampering. We call that aid me PA. What's the English word for that?
Witness tampering.
No. Hearsay. That's hearsay. Or if you write it from your notes, then you're reading from your notes. It's not good. So there, you have to remember something. So he said, what happens if the litigant himself reminded you? That's not so good because, he's got an axe to grind. He wants to tell his side of the story. But if it's a rabbi won't be swayed by the litigant. Like in this case with Rav Ashi, Rav Kana reminded him. Rav Kana says, you're only testifying because they said, no, I remember it on my own. Tanan, we come to a different topic, but it's related to the concept of remembering. How long do you remember something? Tanan Hasam. It says like this in Olos, Hatlulios, mounds, before in modern times we have cemeteries, people bury people in the cemeteries or in the churchyard or whatever, or the backyard, and they mark it. In those days, they weren't always marked. People would bury things. So if you see a mound, you can suspect that somebody buried somebody there, not because that's the dirt, but simply because people would bury under a mound because nobody's going to walk there. If it's a mound, you'll avoid it. So these mounds, if they're near, they're near the city or the road. We'll talk about which city, which road. Whether it's a new mound or whether it's an old mound, they're tamei. We assume that people might have buried there. Why would they bury there? Because they know nobody's going to walk there, and you're worried about Kohanim and Taurus, etc. So if there's a mound, if it's near the city or near the road, whether it's new or old, in other words, what's the difference if it's new or if it's new? The idea is that people would remember if somebody was buried there. But if it's near the road or near the city, somebody could have done, maybe a woman lost a child, a baby, and she just went out and buried herself without you knowing about it. Or whether it's an old one. Old one means so old that we wouldn't remember. They're tamei. You assume there's somebody buried there. Harachokos, if they're far away. Chadashos, if they're new, Taurus. If they're new, they're Taurus. Why? Because we would remember if somebody was buried there. We remember there was a funeral. Yishanos, if they're old, that's so old that you wouldn't remember, then Tameis, they're tamei, even if they're far away from that. What do you mean? Ezu Krova, what's considered near the town? Chamishimam, within 50 amas. Ezu Yishana, what's considered old? Shishim Shana, 60 years. Meaning, if it's past 60 years, people aren't going to remember that somebody might have been buried there. If it was in the last 60 years, people say, yeah, there was a... Huh?
How do they know it's 60 years old?
How do they know it?
This mound is 60 years
no,
old?
if they know within 60 years, you'll remember that this mound, somebody was buried there. If it's more than 60 years old, he won't remember anymore. So we don't know. So that's where he says, even if it's far away, Yishanos are ones that are far away. If they're within 60 years, then people will know if somebody's buried there. Because why would somebody schlep out there? So people will know, yeah, somebody's buried there. Yishanos, if they're so old, meaning over 60 years now, people won't remember. Most of the people are dead, right?
60 years, that means you have to be like 80 years
That's
old.
right. That's right. Very good. Okay, 60 years, this is what we're talking about. Exactly, right. Yishanos Tmeas. That's Rav Meir Shapiro. Rav Meir holds that there's finite numbers here. Near the city means 50 amas. We'll talk about why the city, the road, we'll get that in a minute. 50 amas. What's old? 60 years. Rav Meir. Rav Yehuda says no. There is no fixed time. Provish and minute. Near the city means that there's nothing closer. Because if there's a closer mound, somebody and a woman had to bury her child in the middle of the night, she was embarrassed and she miscarried and she buried the child, and she would have gone to the closer one. So Krova means that there's nothing closer to the city. Yishana she'ein adam zocher, that you don't remember. It's so long enough ago that people don't remember if somebody's buried there or not. My ear, what do you mean the city and the road? Ear mamish, literally a city. Within 50 amos of a city, you consider any mound to be tamei. So, and derech is derech mamish, any road. It's a mistake. You're not sure over here. And in Eretz Yisrael, you're going to say if it's within any mound within near a city or near a road is tamei. Amr Shlokish Gemara says in Nazir, they found a pretext to tear Eretz Yisrael. They said, look, Eretz Yisrael, sorry, otherwise we could say wherever you go, Kohanim can't go. So they said, okay, fine. So Tosfos says over here because they found like a rock. In other words, they said, look, as long as we can assume that if somebody was buried, they were probably buried over here, let's not say every place is tamei. They found a pretext and they said Eretz Yisrael. So what are you going to say? Within every city, within 50 amos of any city in Eretz Yisrael, any mound is considered tamei? Or within 50 amos of any road is considered tamei? You can't assume that. So what do you mean any city? Mean a city that's right next to the cemetery. On the way to the cemetery, the city's right next to the cemetery. Derech basic forest, and the road is near the basic forest. So this is what we said. If it's within 50 amos, a mound which is near the city, which is near the cemetery, or near the road on the way to the cemetery, whether it's new or if it's near there, whether it's new or old, it's tamei. Why? Because even if it's new and you say we don't remember anybody being buried, there's maybe some lady in the middle of the night took her kid out and buried her there. If it's far away, then we would know about it if it was relatively recent. What does relatively recent mean? That people still remember, or Rav Meir said 60 years. If it was a long time ago, people aren't going to remember. There was a tamei also. So it means what? So Bishlam Derech basic forest. You say if it's near the road to the basic forest, so the road basic forest, why wouldn't people go to the basic forest? Why would they put them near the road? Why would people bury somebody under a mound on the road on the way to the basic forest? Go to the basic forest. Oh, tell you why. Zim the Misrami Banish Mashas. Because maybe Rahman Aslan, a child died Friday, and it was right before Shabbos they were taking out, and they didn't have enough time to go all the way to the basic forest, bury him and get back for Shabbos. So they buried him on the road leading out to the cemetery. That can you understand. And it happened that way, but Kavru Batel. So they buried him on a mound. They don't want to bury him in a flat area. Pardon? Yeah, on the road. But here it means that we were talking about a mound off the road. You can assume that the mound off the road, somebody might have buried there because, again, not that the mound is a simon, like somebody's under the mound, that's why it's a mound. It was a mound there, and somebody buried in there because they know nobody's going to walk on a mound. You'll walk on the flat ground. So make a couple of tell, meaning if it's sitting near the basic forest, and you're talking about if it's near there, if a mound near there, you have to assume it was buried, somebody buried there. Cool, the basic forest house, everybody's going to go to the basic forest. Why would they bury in the city if it's right next to the basic forest? Why wouldn't they go there? Because women, again, might bury their deceased stillborn child or a miscarriage in the middle of the night. Or lepers or people who have sicknesses where their limbs fall off and a limb is tamei, Avram and Achai is tamei, like basar ames. So they bury. So until 50 amas, in other words, they might go there. They're from the city. They're not going to go all the way to the cemetery. Why? Because 50 amas they'll go by themselves. She'll go by herself. More than that, Dabra Inish Badash will take somebody with her. That's what we said. If it's within 50 amas of the city, even though the city is on the way to the basic forest, but maybe the woman in the middle of the night, to bury herself, or a leper was embarrassed and his finger fell off or his hand fell off and he wanted to bury it. So within 50 amas, he'll go, right? More than that, he's not going to go to the basic, he's not going to go by himself and he'll go to the basic forest. So that's why we say within 50 amas, it's possible 50 amas from the city that's near the basic forest, or 50 amas off the road that's on the way to the basic forest. You have to assume there in certain, if it's an old one for sure, even if it's far away. We said again, if it's within 50 amas, here, whether it's new or old, maybe somebody would bury there. If it's further than that, then new ones are tar because you'd assume we would know about it. People would remember it because who's going to go that far? Within 50 amas, somebody might go there privately without telling anybody. But if it's more than that, they're not going to go on their own. And therefore, if it's pretty new, we would remember it. And since we don't remember it, that's probably tahor. But if it's an old one, according to Rav Meir, more than 60 years, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we said as long as a person wouldn't remember it anymore, and that's a long time, then you assume that's tamei also. Amr of Chista, the basic paras also. So if it's more than 50 yams, they'll go together basic paras. But that's why we say the difference of 50 yams, because within 50 yams, the guy might take it himself and nobody will know about it. The funeral will not be publicized. So we don't presume Tumah in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is Torah, even though we know that there's thousands of years of history in Eretz Yisrael. We don't assume that there was Tumah in a certain place unless you know about it. There's reason to believe it. There's reason to believe you. There's a cemetery there, or there's reason to believe. The Gemara Nazir talks about if you find in a cave, certain burial sepulchres, how they're set up. If you can assume what's Tamei and what's not. More of there talks about it, but Stam Eretz Yisrael, you don't assume it. Amar Chesser, says Shmami Amar Meir. You see from over here from a mayor who said 60 years. Right? He said what's old? More than 60 years. You see from here that Shis and Shana Mikr. Until 60 years, people remember something. Phalo Mikr, people aren't going to remember. Because we talked about testimony before, we said, okay, you might forget about it, but you'll be reminded. He says, more than 60 years, you're not going to remember it. Shema Mina Rash says, Minik Leil Ezu Yishona Shishan Shana, the time of Mishim Log Kiriu, Hai Sadusa. So therefore, you're not going to remember. You're not going to remember things more than 60 years old, which is pretty good. Like I said also, because there's a whole shaila, if you saw something when you were not bar mitzvah, can you testify about it after your bar mitzvah, right? You can't testify when you're under bar mitzvah. So already, if you hold that you can't testify about something you saw, you have to be at least 73 to be in this situation. But it's possible to remember things. Many of us remember things that took place when we were 1 or 2 years old. So he says, you see from a mayor, Haisadusa, until 60 years you remember it. Below it's not true. It's possible you can remember something that took place 100 years ago. We saw these Zofat that lived 120 in good health. You might remember something that took place a long, long time ago.
Not yesterday.
What? Not yesterday. That's different. A long time. Why? Because over here in the case of the cemetery, case of funerals, did you remember there was a funeral there? I think there was something there 59 years ago. I remember something about that. But you're not forced to it. It's not imposed on you to testify, right? It's just like it's happening that way. But when you saw testimony, you saw a murder take place, or you were called to a gittin or a kedushin, or some sort of a transaction, and you were there and you were witnesses, then it's imposed upon you. You push yourself to remember. That's the point. But over here, where it's imposed on you, you're going to remember. I'm a witness about this case. You're going to push it, so you could remember something even more than 60 years. Now, when we say you confirm the witnesses on a shtar, the IOU, the Malva says, here's my shtar, Yomi $1,000, right? What happens? The Loba says, I don't owe you anything. It's a forgery. So you confirm it. How do you confirm it? The witnesses themselves can say, these are our signatures. That means that the witnesses, let's say Reuben and Shimon are the witnesses. So Reuben confirms his and Shimon confirms his. That should be enough. But that's not two. Each one is only confirming his own. That's 1 and 1. Or do you need 2 witnesses to testify about each signature? So therefore, Reuben can testify about his and Shimon's if he knows Shimon's, and Shimon can testify about Shimon's and Reuben's. Or you could have 2 other Eidim who know both of them. Or you can have 2 other Eidim who know Shimon, and 2 other Eidim who know Reuben's signatures. That's going to discussion over here. Reuben says, this is mine, and that's Shimon's. I recognize them. And they're believed. That's a valid confirmation. If each one just says, no, I confirm my own, you need somebody else to testify with them, because each one is only confirming his own signature. And you need 2 for each signature, apparently, according to Rebbe, Dibber Rebbe. You don't have to add. If each one confirms his own signature, that's good enough. You don't need 2 people to confirm each signature. Each person is willing to say, this is my signature. So the Gemara says, if you analyze this, you'll see L'divrei Rebbe who says you need two witnesses on each signature, right? And he could testify about his own signature because he's a witness that's a good signature. That's my signature. And the other guy's also testifying. So according to Rebbe, you need what? The Divrei Rebbe, al ksav yad ne'emidin. When they confirm it, they're confirming their signatures. So you need 2 people on each signature. The Divrei Chacham al manash b'shtar emidin. When the Chacham say no, each one could just say that's mine and that's mine. Each one says this is my signature. The other guy said that's my signature. You don't have 2 witnesses on each signature. You just have one witness on each signature, the guy himself who signed it. Why is that good enough according to Chachamim? Because they're not testifying about the signatures, they're testifying about the transaction in the shtar. They're saying the shtar took place, yes, that's my signature. And the other guy says, that's my signature, it's good enough. Otherwise, you would need two for each. Rebbe says you need two for each. Two people to testify about each signature, either these two guys or two other guys, right? About each signature. The Rabbanan say no, they're testifying about the shtar. So about that the document took place, the money, the $100 in the shtar is what they're testifying for. Each guy can testify himself. It says more pshit, isn't that obvious? Well, how else could you explain it? No. Mount is saying, I might think, listen carefully. I might think Rebbe's not sure. Rebbe's not sure. When you say you confirm the witnesses, do you need two witnesses on each signature on the document? Or do you need one, just the guy himself confirming that this took place? Maud is if you had two other guys who aren't signed here, right, confirming how could they confirm what took place, the transaction? They didn't see it. They can only confirm, yes, I recognize Reuben and Shimon's signatures. So Chitam is saying, Rabbi Sukha, he's not sure. Are they testifying about their own signatures, right? Which case you need two on each one. Or are they testifying what took place, the transaction in the shtar? The nafkamina, listen to this. Reuben and Shimon signed on an IOU, right? A loan took place between a malva and a loba. $1,000 was lent out. Reuben and Shimon signed on it. Reuben dies. Now they want to confirm this. They want to confirm it. Shimon comes. Listen to this. Shimon comes and he says, "Okay, this is my signature, right? This is my signature, and that's Reuben's signature. But you can only testify about your own. Your own has your own power to say I'm testifying about what took place. But to confirm Shimon's signature, to confirm Reuben's signature, the one who died, you need Shimon and another guy. It says, "Hey, the meis chad minayu leboy shnayim min shuk." You need two people from the shuk. Why? Shimon. If Reuben died and Shimon's testifying, it's possible that Shimon's signature, Shimon testifying about his own signature, that's enough because he's testifying on what took place. That's good enough. He only needs himself. And now to confirm Reuben's signature, if you use Shimon and one other witness, one other outside witness, it comes out that Shimon effectively is confirming 3/4 of the shtar because he's doing his own. Right? If he's testifying on the document, not on the signatures, then he for himself is good enough, and he's testifying Reuben. Reuben's dead, so Reuben can't testify about the document, about the transaction. So you need two Adim to testify about Reuben. So if one of them is Shimon and one of them is some guy in the street who recognized the signature, comes out 3/4 of the document is being confirmed by Shimon and 1/4 by somebody else, and the Torah says Al Pishnai made him 50-50. So here's an nafkamina. If he's short nafkamina, you need two guys. But the im came if you don't have two guys from the street. In other words, Shimon's one of the guys. Shimon says about his own and about Reuben's. A less a third, meaning 3/4 of the money is being taken out by one guy. By the mouth of one, by Shimon. And we're not sure. So in other words, we're not sure. The possibility could be that Rebbe's not sure. Is he testifying about the document, about the transaction? And each guy can testify about his own. And if that's the case, if Reuben died and Shimon can testify about his own, that's good enough. But for Reuben's signature, you need two guys. And if Shimon's one of them, it comes out 3/4 of the document, 3/4 of the transaction is being collected based on Shimon and 1/4 on the other guy. Therefore, what do you need? Shimon should testify about his own and about his own. And two other guys from the street will testify about Reuben's. That would be okay, right? You go l'chumra both ways, meaning you go l'chumra that you need two guys for Reuben, and you need two guys for each, right? We go for two guys for each. Kamash Malon, and therefore what? What when you say l'chumra, meaning it's possible that Shimon alone could testify about it because he's testifying about the transaction, not about the signatures. But maybe the other way, maybe you need two guys. So therefore, what do you need? You need Shimon testifying about his own, plus you need two guys from the street testifying about Reuben, or two guys from the street testifying about Reuben and Shimon. In case Shimon can't testify about his own alone, because maybe he's testifying about the signatures, not about the transaction. So
in case of a star that has two signatures on it, that's good enough, right?
No, we're contesting. We're saying it's forged.
That's what I'm saying.
We're saying it's forged. So how do you confirm it? How do you confirm it? So Chachamim say Reuben could say that's mine, and Shimon could say that's mine. That's good enough. You don't need any more than that. Rebbe said no. Rebbe said no. You need two on each one. So if you have Reuben saying that's mine and that's his, that's two, and Shimon saying that's mine and that's his, that's good enough because you have two on each one. But if one, let's say, so what's the argument? The Rabbanan say that each one testifies on his own because each one just confirming the transaction, not testifying about the signatures. That's good enough. You confirm it by testifying about what took place. Rebbe says no, you need two signatures on each one. So you're not testifying about the star, about what took place. You're testifying about the signatures. So isn't it obvious that that's the machlokas? We're saying no. According to Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, it's very simple. Rabbanan say you're testifying what took place, so each one is good enough. But according to Rebbe, we're not sure. Maybe he's not sure. Maybe Rebbe's not sure if they're testifying about their signatures, in which case you need two on each, or they're testifying about the transaction. And Afkamina will be if Reuven died. If Reuven died, Shimon cannot just say, this is mine, and then that's his, and bring one other guy, because maybe 3/4 will be done by Shimon then. So therefore, what you need to do is you have to bring another guy from the street. You need Shimon to say, this is mine, and that's Reuven's, and another guy from the street to testify about both of them, about both of them, to make sure, right, to make sure that you're not in a situation where Shimon's doing 3/4 of it. So therefore, you have two Adam from the street come. You need two Adam from the street to come and testify about Reuven's, and one of them is good enough for Shimon also. So for Shimon's, so this way we know that you don't have 3/4 by one and 1/4 by the other guy. At least this way he's not doing more than 50%. That's what you might think. That's not what took place. Rebbe is a pashut. Bein l'kula, bein l'chumra. Whether it's l'kula l'chumra, you need two Adam on each signature. You need two Adam on each signature, and therefore, if Reuven died, Shimon could testify about his own, and he could testify about Reuven's too. But you still need another aide to testify about Shimon and about Reuven, because they testify about the signatures, not about the transaction. You need two from the shekbei love. You have to need two. Bezu Rabbi Lekula Rabbanan Lechumra, and in this case, what we say Rebbe is Lekula and the Rabbanan are Lechumra. Why are the Rabbanan Lechumra? Right? Because he says if one of them died, right? If one of them died, if they're both alive, each one could testify according to Rabbanan, this is mine, and that's good enough because they're testifying about the money. But if one of them died, that may say, man, you need two from the shuk to testify on this one, love. And why? Because here, you need two people because Shimon cannot testify about Reuven's share because otherwise he's doing 3/4. According to the Rabbanan, right? According to Rabbanan, Shimon can't testify about Reuven's because Shimon can testify on own, that's 50%. If he's testifying about Reuven, who's dead signature, then he's accomplishing 3/4 of it. So you need two people from the Shuk Le'elav, the Zu Rebbe Lekula, Rabbanan Lechumra. And here Rebbe is Lekula. Why is he Lekula? Why is he Lekula? So Rashi says, there's a Rashi, I think there's a Rashi here. Right? Right? According to Rabbanan, one guy can testify about himself and two guys from the Shuk. But according to Rebbe, you need 2 and 2. So you need 2 on each one. And therefore Rebbe will be Lekula, Rabbanan be Lechum, because you need 2 people from the street. But according to Rebbe, you don't need 2 people from the street. You need 1 person from the street. Why? Because Shimon could testify about his own and about Reuven's, and one other person from the street could testify about Reuven's and Shimon's also. Shimon and another guy from the street, you only need 1 guy from the street. They'll each testify about Reuven's and Shimon's, because according to Rebbe, they're testifying about the signatures, not about the transaction. But according to the Rabbanan, that they're testifying about the transaction, that's all good and dandy if Reuven and Shimon are both still alive. Reuven says, that's my signature. Shimon says, that's my signature. But if Reuven died, so Shimon can testify his own signature, that's half. But what about Reuven? Reuven's dead. He can't say that's my signature. You need 2 people in the street. In that case, the Rabbanan are Lechumra and Rebbe is Lekula, because according to Rabbanan, you need 2 guys from the street, and according to Rebbe, you only need 1. If there's only, you can't find two people in the street, what do you do? We'll see that tomorrow when we pick it up from here tomorrow.